For me, marijuana was a magic drug. The reason why it was magic for me was because it allowed me to tap into sensations and experiences about myself. I simply couldn't get any other way except by the dope.
It's probably 8 or 9 when I had my first joint, and from then on I associated smoking dope with relaxing, enjoyment, tranquility and peace in a way. It was really strange.
What relaxes you instantly and you just go, oh, that's right. I can't believe I just wasted 3 days all upset about this stupid thing, and yeah, one drag of marijuana and it's all gone away.
But then there came a point when smoking it became distinctly unpleasant. And really I felt a bit paranoid or just uncomfortable in my body. And at that point I felt it was a problem, and I would just rather not use it, so I didn't.
I'd go into it and I'd go into this horrible headspace and I'd think all my friends were talking in codes around me and I'd feel really disconnected from everybody and freaked out and paranoid, and I'd be promising myself that I'd never do it again, and I'd come out of it the next day and go, I was just being stupid. I was just being silly. I'm fine. What was my problem? It'll be all right. And I'd do it again. And I did it every day for a year. And each time I did it, it was worse. And it was just so bizarre.
Marijuana definitely transcends the boundaries of the conscious mind, and it goes into the subconscious mind. And it's extremely joyful too. It feels supernatural, it feels mysterious. The attraction of marijuana is instantly there after the first experience, if the experience is positive. The interesting thing with marijuana, I found, unfortunately, it can start with magic and can finish off in madness if marijuana hasn't been understood. According to my experience, the problem with marijuana is if people just stop it and don't know why they actually have done it and never worked out what the drugs was doing to them. I strongly believe, according to my observation, that just stopping the dope is not the solution. Because the marijuana has introduced a very specific state, it requires to follow through on that experience.
So it was when I got into Chinese medicine that the picture of the drugs suddenly started to unfold, and I could see what is really the nature of drugs. Chinese medicine is well suited to address drugs. Why is that? Because Chinese medicine addresses the person. It is not one-size-fits-all approach to problems. It looks at individuals, but most importantly, it's not absolute. It's not reductionist in its view. In Chinese medicine, you can't answer a question, say, is marijuana bad for me? It's in context too. So if you ask me, is marijuana bad? I said, I don't know. I'm not doing it now. I haven't done it for nearly 20 years. However, if you would have asked me 30 years ago, I would have said, everyone should smoke. As a therapist, in particular as an acupuncturist and Chinese medicine practitioner, I have observed that actually our society is not well equipped yet to deal with drugs. It's all about saying no, but it's no one actually telling you what happens if you've done it. What's next? Everyone goes out there, does all the drugs, society tells you it's bad, so you stop, and then, wow, what's happening? The fact is we don't feel the same anymore after drugs. Therefore, we need a medicine that is contextual, that puts ourselves in context too. So therefore, Chinese medicine addresses, if you've done drugs, what does it mean? What's next? And that's what I'm going to address with you today with the marijuana, and look into why is it actually magic and why is it madness. And you will see very soon there's a lot of good things in marijuana, but obviously a lot of bad things too. According to biology, what we refer as homeostatic intelligence, we are actually an organism which is destined to seek balance. We are programmed to correct any forms of imbalances. If you eat something that doesn't belong to your body, it throws your equilibrium out. The body will attain balance in its own way. If you lean over to a certain side, the body will make sure to attain balance. So I have never, ever in 25 years as a therapist have met a patient who asked me, I like to become imbalanced. So there is the homeostatic intelligence within us that comes forward in our conscious and subconscious desire to be balanced. So for that reason, we can say that we are naturally addicted to balance. And from that perspective, we can say that everyone is addicted to something. The problem is, once we actually affirm ourselves that I'm powerless to my addiction, I'm actually creating a powerlessness to it. And I therefore create a biological addiction to it, and therefore have a state that I never will be able to drink again, never will be able to smoke again, never will be able to take drugs again. A person gets caught up in a very, very vicious downward spiral, gets caught up and very hard to work with. New way of thinking goes into, you need to affirm that you're powerful over drugs and that you might have a reason why you've done your drugs.
I like Chinese medicine because Chinese medicine is not absolute. And Chinese medicine can't tell you if marijuana is bad or good. It is relative and contextual. In context too, that's what the value is about in Chinese medicine. So there might be a time in your life where marijuana is simply a necessity. For me, I believe it was. I really truly believe. I grew up in a family environment which felt very rigid, despite the fact that my parents and my sisters and my brothers were very open-minded. But I felt like my soul wasn't free. I felt like I couldn't really express myself the way I wanted. And as soon as I had my first marijuana, it was like breaking out of that cage. It was open up the door and I was flying free and I was going for it. And my mind, my spirit was roaming existences and experiences of emotional freedom I couldn't have had before. Because it opened up that door, the only way to actually make sense of that world was to continue going into that world. Once I was outside that world, it was hard to put into words. Because when we talk consciously about our reality, we talk yin and yang. We seem to separate between the two values. But when we smoke marijuana, yin and yang become one. And we have a conscious experience of unification. We are joined with all there is.
So in all my times as a lecturer and a therapist, I always ask the questions to my patients and my students. Why do you smoke? And these are the 7 most spread answers. Chill out comes up all the time. To feel high, feel happy, enhance sexuality, stimulate creativity, enable to sleep deeply, and to expand consciousness. So my answer would be, why do you smoke? Why did I smoke? To magically correct or enhance your organ function. And this influences the course of events. It makes us feel we are removed from normal life and gives us delight. So from that perspective, we can say that marijuana is definitely magic. However, it is here why the organ function, what we need to look into. Because in Chinese medicine, without organ, there's no reality. There's no emotional, no spiritual, no psychological reality. So it's the organ which is actually responsible for how you feel. So therefore, we're going to look at what is the organ in context to drugs. So every drug requires a very specific organ to work from. We call that the target organ. So the target organ in Chinese medicine to marijuana is actually the liver. The fact is that without organs, drugs can't work. So if you have an organ and you take the drug is like a software. It's an information that is not taken to the liver or to the organ, and then is synthesized into action of that particular information. So the organs are the hardware, the drugs are the software, and you require a relevant hardware for very specific software. This is why the Chinese say it's the organ which creates reality. And therefore, from now on, we purely focus on organ. We don't talk brains in Chinese medicine as such. So the liver. Obviously, for marijuana, the liver is important. So therefore, we look at what is the liver. The liver is responsible for a smooth flow of qi in all directions. It's a smooth flow or the free flow of the qi, of the energy, encompassing every element of your body. And the emotions of the liver is anger, resentment, irritability, frustration, and happiness. All subject to the flow, smooth flow of qi. And the liver function is regulated by yin and yang. So we're going to look at yin and yang. What we see, yin is non-active. It's going within. Yin is stillness. Yang is active and expansion. Yang is doing it. And yin and yang regulate the flow of the qi. Yin and yang is expansion and contraction. Yin is contraction, yang is expansion. So by contracting and expansion, you have life occurring. The flow of the qi is regulated by contraction, by expansion. And therefore what you have is a frequency curve of going up and down, and keep flowing, contracting and expanding. So therefore what we have is the ability to either create chaos or order. So yin and yang either create chaos or order. And drugs control yin and yang. So this is where the important fact comes into. Drugs control yin and yang, which is why drugs are so attractive. And which is why drugs are used so extensively in medicine, because it controls the whole regulation and manifestation of emotions and physiological function of each of the organs. So the drugs will control yin and yang. We've got three groups. The first are the ATS, amphetamine type stimulants. These drugs are yang in nature. Then we got the sedating, the opiates. These are the yin drugs. Then we got the magnifying drugs, which is where marijuana belongs to. And a magnifying drug is the most difficult drug, the most complex drug to put into absolute terms. It's almost impossible, which is why we got such a problem with, in the Western world, from a Western scientific perspective, to identify what actually is marijuana. Every study opposes the previous study. And the fact is that we have such fluctuations in the experiences with identical quality and substance and time and conditions that we can't pinpoint in absolute terms what is that what marijuana actually does. If you've got 5 people in one room, identical circumstances, identical time, identical dose of marijuana, you got 5 different outcomes. The first person speaks, yap, 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 yap. The second person gets introverted. The third person stares. The fourth person is looking for the fridge. And the fifth person cracks up laughing. Next day, same experiment. The person will look for the fridge and have the munchies, gets paranoid. The person will crack up laughing, now sits very quiet and stares. The person who was talking all the time is suddenly munchies. So it fluctuates with person, with time, etc. There's a lot going down that can't be put into absolute terms. So a magnifying drug, what does it actually mean? And what we see here is that actually the magnifying property refers to your emotional, spiritual, mental, and physiological state. Marijuana provides a conscious experience of the inner world. Marijuana basically shows you who you are. So what is this state we talk about? It's energetically speaking, your state is the result of your organ condition, the flow of your qi, as regulated by yin and yang. So you got your organ condition, your flow of qi as regulated by yin and yang. Marijuana magnifies either chaos or order, magic or madness, as regulated by liver yin and liver yang, which is why you can't put marijuana into absolute terms, because we need to look into who are the types, constitutional types, the different kind of people who actually consume dope, who will have the relevant experiences.
Well, I use it to conk out, really. So initially it was like that. There was a change there. Initially it was energising, and obviously creativity and that sort of stuff. But it also gave me another reference of time. Like everything was, jobs unfinished and all that sort of stuff. And have some marijuana, and everything was sort of right again, because it altered that perception and brought back a sense of order again.
I also find that my liver reacts with a lot of anger, especially first thing in the morning, when I didn't realise that was a cleansing period for the body, an expulsion time of the body first thing in the morning. And I wake up with the shits predominantly. Not predominantly, but sometimes I just wake up and there's no reason for it, there's no explanation. And my first impulse is to go and have a smoke.
I think the first symptom that crept in was one of extreme lassitude and apathy. And it just made going out difficult. It made socialising more difficult. It didn't make it easy. So there'd be a bunch of friends round, we were all about the same age, and we'd smoke, and then no one would say anything. And that was really boring. Or if we were going out and we had a couple of joints beforehand, the energy to go out would sort of wane, and half the time we wouldn't make it out the door.
I'd be sitting there completely immobilised. I wouldn't be able to move, I wouldn't be able to breathe. I thought if I breathed, they'd think that I knew. It was all, I didn't want them to know that I was freaking out, but yeah, I didn't want them to know that I was freaking out, and I thought that anything, any movement, any motion that I made would give it away. So I'd just be pretty much...
I think for a while it made us energetic, or made me energetic, and still did things, played music, played guitar, and went out and did things. But I think it was always, or ultimately, with a kind of the standard paranoia background, that the issues that we really have in terms of our psychology and our personality don't go away, and the process of smoking for me was an avoidance mechanism, so the things that I was avoiding eventually came to the surface.
So the liver yang type is one type we look first. That is the type who is advanced and act. They're eager to put everything in order. They're instantly right and now. They just always go, go, go. They're the outgoing personalities. They're easy to engage. They're always busy. They've got the enormous high sex drive. And liver yang is the ingredient for success. It's the business energy. When you go to business motivation seminars, you're learning liver yang. You become liver yang. If you look at all the motivators in the business world in the 80s and 90s, true liver yang types. Liver yang types are always on the go. They always go, go, go. Liver yang types don't know depression, but they're never happy either. They don't know depression, but they're never happy either. So they're constantly on trying to create by advance and act. And the liver yang types are the ones who actually enjoy marijuana to the max. And in many cases, you could say they need it as a medicine. What you also look into here is that Chinese medicine says that in order to actually experience the magic of marijuana, you need some forms of healthy liver yang. So from that perspective, we can actually sum up a little bit already. What is the magic of marijuana? It is instant stress relief. Because liver is the organ associated with time. Marijuana, due to the magnifying function, provides lots of space. For example, if in a situation that you're rushing around and you got deadlines coming out of ears, The red traffic light is the biggest threat. But as soon as you have a few cones, the red traffic light becomes beautiful. And when you're really stoned, have a good time, and you crack up laughing, and someone comes up and says, okay, can you tell me how much time you have spent cracking up? In that moment, you can't imagine how much time you actually have spent. It could be either 5 minutes or it could be 2 hours. When you do the dishes and you're stoned, you know what I mean. You really do the dishes and there's no time involved, which is great. So every time you do the dishes, have a smoke and you will see what I mean. So the fact also is that once the liver chi flows freely, we feel inspired. And this takes us to probably the most attractive aspect of marijuana, which is creativity. A lot of musicians need marijuana because they say it gives them ideas about what songs to play. So, from a Chinese perspective, liver is the organ associated with movement, birth, and growth. Every organ got its function. The liver is responsible for movement, birth, and growth. And the liver is associated with ideas, direction, and with planning. So the marijuana, its magnifying property, sensitizes you to these liver functions. So what we have is that we become aware of ideas and therefore feel engaged. In Chinese medicine, it says ideas are always around us. We're just mostly not aware of them. And it's marijuana which has got the ability to sensitize you to that aspect of the liver function, and you suddenly become aware of ideas, and which is why suddenly people start playing songs. The fact also is that specific organ imbalances, as in the case of liver yin types, will actually magnify stagnation and ability to act. So if you're a liver yin type, a totally different type to the liver yang, you actually have a totally different experience. Because liver yang is more movement and action. The magnifying property of marijuana allows for you to experience marijuana as a magic drug. If you are liver yin type, you will have a totally different area, which is why we got such a polarizing view in our society on marijuana. Some people love it, some people hate it. So we looked at those people who love the dope. We now look at the people who actually don't like the dope. And these are the liver yin types. What are liver yin types? They're the opposite to liver yang types. They're the introverted, shy, self-conscious, and always concerned what others may think of them. Liver yin types always feel watched and always feel judged. The liver yin types don't enjoy marijuana. This is a funny thing, they don't enjoy it, but in many times, in many circumstances, they can't stop using it. This is one of the biggest enigma we always had in acupuncture, and even when I was a drug and alcohol counselor. People didn't enjoy it, make them paranoid, but they actually couldn't stop. They didn't like when they were stoned because they realized their life was out of control, but they couldn't really stop doing it. So instead of whacking the person's face, say, come on, get your act together, it is which Chinese medicine actually put light into this problem and says, look, you simply can't. Because as a liver yin excess type or liver yin type, you lack liver yang, an energetic quality required to change the direction of your life or habits. So if you're a liver yin type, or if the liver yang has become depleted and the liver yin therefore has grown to pathological proportions, and you are a marijuana smoker, you most likely will be caught up in a state where you wait for something to change. So liver yin types are prone to paranoia, and they're prone to experience madness purely to their energetic default state of turning order into chaos. These are the people who suffer from the exit syndrome. That happened to me once. That was after I was doing years and years of speed. It just depleted all the yin of my kidney and the yang of the kidney, so I became very liver yin after a while. And smoking, every time I smoked, I became paranoid. In the old days, I loved it, but then after a few years, I couldn't do it anymore. Every time I got stoned, I go, Everyone is watching me. Everyone is waiting for me to say something intelligent. I became very, very conscious, self-conscious, very concerned what others thought of me, very shy. I mean, we're talking back over 20 years now, obviously. So I never forget one incident, and I was drinking lots of alcohol that night. I thought, my God, I'm building all my liver yang. And after about 25 stubbies, I started to feel normal because my liver yin was so out of balance and my yang so much destroyed. The alcohol was bringing lots of liver yang into your system, and it was giving me the assertion and self-empowerment to feel almost balanced. So I thought, oh my God, I go for dinner with these people. I thought, in this house, I thought this is great now for me to enjoy a bit of dope. So we're sitting around in the lunchroom. It was 2 o'clock in the morning, and this big fat joint goes around, Sensimilia, and I had one puff. And in that moment, everything changed. Everything suddenly, everyone was looking at me. Woof. I became extremely self-conscious, extremely suddenly concerned what others think of me. Instantly I thought, my God, I have to do something very intelligent now. At the same time, the paranoia developed. And what happened also in the same time was the feeling, I need to get out of here as soon as possible, get out of it, because everyone was just looking at me. Everything was going into me. So there was a wardrobe which had a door, and I thought it was the exit door. So I thought I better get out of the room. So I got into the door, opened the door, went in, and I was stuck in the wardrobe. And I was stuck in the wardrobe, surrounded by the coat hangers. I didn't have the liver yang to change that situation, to walk out and say, bugger, this is all crazy. So because I didn't have that liver yang, instead, I made sure to stay back, because then I thought the people outside would think I have an important business to do in the wardrobe. As soon as after about half an hour, I walked out. I thought by now the people would realize my important mission was finished. Obviously, looking around, there was not one person in the room who actually took notice. Because that's the fact of the dope. Anyway, this sort of crazy situation, liver yin types know far too well. Liver yang types have no idea what can happen to you. They don't understand these cases. But liver yin types do.
Initially, I'd start thinking that people were talking in codes and like having a bit of a laugh at me or whatever. Oh yeah, and if there was a bowl of chips there and everyone was munching out on them, I'd be like, oh, I better not have a chip, they might think I'm greedy. Like real, just stupid paranoia, and that it started off like that, and then it became more serious where I really thought that there was a full-on coded dynamic going on that we went into every time, and it was understood by everyone else, and I didn't get it, and I was kind of the brunt of it, and it was heavy.
I mean, I remember one time I'd taken a bunch of acid and I had a great night on that, and then someone had given me some hydro in the morning, and I got terribly shaky all over and quite paranoid and felt really ill, and just mostly hydro. I find that I must be really sensitive to the fungicide in the hydro mix, and it's just really toxic for me.
I have tried some hydro type marijuana, and this was only probably about 5 years ago. Just had a little bit and found it incredibly toxic and really psychologically disturbing in the extreme. This is not mild, this is like having a psychotic episode basically. And I know the difference between marijuana that's grown in the ground with sunlight and fertiliser and air and fresh water, and I know the difference, and I just found it was incredibly toxic.
Out of the whole lot, we can sum up now that we actually have affiliations between marijuana and madness, that we look into liver yang deficiency and liver yin excess governing our behavior. So you look at liver yang deficiency, liver yang advance and act. If this becomes deficient, that means there's no emotional mechanism in your body, in your mind, to actually make you advance and act, to go. If liver yin axis governs your behavior, that means retreat and wait. Just wait. Chronic waiting will take place. Realistically speaking, what happens is that unfinished jobs accumulate in the house. So, however, if you see a lot of unaccumulated jobs, unfinished jobs accumulating, what you're actually experiencing is a frustration development. So as the retreat and wait, the next thing is that retreat and wait dominates our response to self-expectations and dreams. So if you've got certain dreams and ideas about your life and you're smoking marijuana and you don't have the liver yang to actually act upon these dreams, what happens is you're getting caught up in actually escaping into ideas. As soon as we get stuck in the planning phase, frustration turns into bitterness. By that time, in order to lift our state somehow, we try to talk about our ideas. So by talking about it, we somehow feel good about ourselves, but we never really follow through. So we become the talkers, not the doers. And obviously, the biggest one is the development into anxiety and panic disorders. This can happen by strong dope over years, but also if there's hydrodope involved. Hydromarijuana is a new phenomenon in our society. The problem with hydromarijuana is that it's not grown in earth. And earth provides yin for the plant. It's grown in water. That means you will have an energetics in the plant that is imbalanced already at birth. So we're going to look at that, what that means, because the ramification of that actually resembles back to the 5 elements of the Chinese, which is in many ways called the magic cycle of creation. Wood nurtures fire. You give the wood to the fire becomes ash. The ash evaporates as earth and then becomes cloud. It rains as water to nurture the wood, which then gives food for the fire. This is called the nurturing cycle. Then wood controls earth, as wood keeps the earth together like in mud bricks. Earth controls water in dams. Water controls fire. The fire gets out of control, the water controls it. The fire controls metal. The metal gets cut by the fire. The metal controls wood. The metal is the blade which chops wood, and wood controls earth. So this magic cycle is all you need in order to create life and to maintain life for as long as there's consciousness in physical form. Because all these 5 elements is all what it's need to keep the balance and therefore feeling good. So these 5 elements we can't escape of. As soon as you take one element out, you don't have this physical world. You need these 5 elements. So now you look at what marijuana does, because marijuana operates via the wood, which is liver, the organ liver. So marijuana operates via the wood element. For example, if you take speed, it operates via the earth. Heroin operates via the water element. Exercise via the metal element. Meditation via fire element. So marijuana targets the wood element and enters the cycle of creation via the wood element, and then either nurtures or controls the flow of order accordingly. So we're going to look what that means. As it targets primarily on the wood is actually slightly bigger already in its application. So with marijuana, you actually activate the mental processes in context to dreams and ideas. So when you smoke lots of powerful dope, what you actually create is an excess of ideas. An excess of ideas, but no realization. And as you have an imbalance between ideas and lack of realization, you actually have an excess of ideas feeding the fire element. So you overfeed the fire. So with hydrodope in particular, what you do is actually, instead of putting normal wood into the fire, you actually put petrol saturated wood into the fire. So it's wood saturated in petrol and giving to the fire, so the fire starts spreading out of proportion. In particular, with the idea that it's actually fungicides in the system, it actually aggravates it even further. And lots of hydrodope is actually sprayed with fungicides. There's only a little bit of hydrodope which is organic lately. Anyway, what it has repercussion on that is that it actually now this fire gets out of control. At the same time, the wood over controls the earth, and the earth is going down. This is accounting for the nausea, the head spins, but also for the psychosis that develops afterwards. At the same time, the fire is over controlling the metal, and the metal is going down, and therefore the metal associating with breath in context to fire, seat of the mind, where the peace of the mind can be experienced, but because it's over nurtured, therefore out of control, there's no seat for the mind, and anxieties develop. In context for metal not providing good breathing ability, it develops into panic disorders. So combine the two things, and with the earth depleting due to the over control, develops into this psychosis. The next problem is that the earth and the metal are too weak to actually nurture the water. The water is declining. As the water declines, it can't control the fire. The fire gets more out of control. The metal is too weak to control the wood. The wood is getting more out of control. So it's a hydro-chaos cycle that, unfortunately, at this stage, only gets treated by drugs. The next thing what you observe is that you can't sleep. So the liver is the responsible action for that. The liver is our mechanism to induce sleep. In the liver, there's a spiritual resource. It's called the Hun. And that mechanism, at night time when you go to bed, literally is going up to your mind and takes your mind into your heart to reside for sleep. It's the mind who goes to the heart to sleep. So that mechanism of the Hun is actually interrupted due to the fact that the Hun is like a machine that actually requires liver qi and yin to do its function. But because Marana interrupts liver qi and depletes the yin so that the Hun can perform its action smoothly, this is actually not occurring. So as a result of that is that the Hun gets up to the mind, but it's stuck. It's like an engine not having the oil nor the petrol to move proper. It feels like on the last spurts of petrol, and therefore it can't complete the action of going to your mind and taking it into the heart. So as soon as you have a smoke, it instantly operates via the smooth muscles of the body, and everything relaxes again, and go, oh, sleep again. The third thing that you notice once you give up, you're feeling very, very lethargic, and you can't be bothered doing anything. You feel very, very tired about things, you feel tired about this, you don't feel good about doing anything. This is the reason why, because liver yang is lacking, lack of liver yang. The fourth one is the biggest problem. You constantly notice that you're cranky, irritable, and angry. And this is because the liver qi is stagnant. So we're going to look into that, why that is, because this is one of the biggest problems we got with giving up marijuana. So irritability and anger in Chinese medicine got its very specific reason for being there. So the liver is responsible for smooth flow of qi in all directions. As soon as the liver qi flows smoothly, we perceive that as order. And therefore, emotions are stabilized. When liver qi stagnates, order can't be perceived. So if we, within ourselves, don't perceive order, this translates as being irritable and cranky. As soon as we don't perceive order and get cranky and irritable, what happens is the liver yang is called upon, the energetics of anger, to make the chi move purely for the purpose to restore order. The idea is to restore order. So it's a natural survival mechanism. The fact is that as soon as you smoke a few bongs again, suddenly it's perceived as order again. Why is that? Because marijuana subdues liver yang. It reduces liver yang arising to the point where suddenly there is no need to act and you're feeling mellow again. This is probably the true evidence to that marijuana has got an addictive quality. The fact that we say in our society marijuana is not addictive, as a therapist, I have observed completely opposite.
When I first smoked, it seemed there was an element of fun. As time went on, I found I could not stop smoking. I found that the effect it gave me was I guess, relatively unpleasant. And until such time that I was smoking that much, I couldn't even add up change in a shop or remember anything. And basically, we just lived a lifestyle of that's all we did.
There's such an entrenched drug culture in it that in my circle of friends, I found that my desire, or my partners and my desire trying to get out of the drug dependence has actually isolated us. There's a lot of people who don't want to associate with us now because we're actually trying to live a cleaner life or trying to come to the same conclusions without being supported by supported by a drug.
No, at first I did it I smoked regularly, at least every weekend, and then I became a daily smoker. And then when I was 21, I went overseas, and my parents sent me to my sister so that I could actually get off it, and she wouldn't let me have any. And so I didn't have any for about 4 weeks, and I crawled the walls and I couldn't sleep.
I do think it's addictive because I didn't even like it and I couldn't stop. I didn't even like it and I couldn't stop. I couldn't stop doing it. So imagine if you liked it.
So the addictive nature is in case of uncontrollable anger in liver yang rising. So those of us who have got this liver yang rising constantly and therefore experiencing uncontrollable anger, they know exactly as soon as I smoke a little bit of marijuana, it provides the yin. And that moment there's retreat and wait. That means no need to restore order. If there's a lot of stress in your life, and you live a yang type, marijuana provides time and space. So it can easily become a necessary part of your life. In case of chi stagnation in people who got the constitution who actually can handle marijuana, for them it becomes a form of pain management. We've got a lot of cancer cases where people actually like the dope because it actually becomes a pain management. And in case of emotional instability in liver yang axis types, people will constantly flare up. It provides an experience of order. So constantly people are always annoyed. Marijuana actually puts that into place. And in many ways you can say these people probably need it because it makes them feel normal. I treat a lot of people who are really classic liver yang axis types or very powerful liver yang types. For them to give up marijuana is like so difficult. So difficult. They've got an enormous high sex drive, they've got enormous go, they're just all the time organizing this, organizing that. The marijuana takes the edge off. If now, these people get said, come on, stop smoking. If the wife or the parents of them, look, you better stop smoking. It's impossible almost. It's almost impossible. If someone like that comes to my clinic, the first thing I say is, don't give up dope. What you do instead is looking at what is the energetics underlying to your condition that needs to be addressed first before you even think about going there. So marijuana is an enormous, dangerous drug in that condition. You just wouldn't simply stop it. For example, in medicine, it is well known that you don't stop certain drugs, like beta blockers, for example. If you've got a high blood pressure, beta blockers, you wouldn't suddenly decide to stop it overnight. You go slowly off. You do a lot of other things. And this is the same with marijuana. In this sort of situation, once it's in the addictive nature, you actually start working with it. You can't just suddenly stop it. You create a lot of problems. Okay, so what's the cure? Chinese medicine says organs either create magic or madness. Organs either make order out of chaos or they make chaos out of order. So we need to recall what we said in the beginning, that it's our biological destiny to correct imbalances, which we refer to as homeostatic intelligence. It's the means of attaining balance which is the issue. I call it the drug-free corrections. If you're a drug user, the first thing, in case you want to stop drugs, the first thing what you're going to look into is having regular acupuncture and bodywork, because the needle and the bodywork goes into the obstruction and allows the energy to become free. So we call that correction by healer. The next one is herbs. Chinese medical herbs are so powerful that people, when they start taking it, are surprised what it does to them. I get always emails from people who finally go onto the path who tell me they can't believe the effect Chinese herbs has got on their system. Chinese herbs are really powerful stuff. And Chinese herbs work like a solvent. Chinese herbs enter each meridian in the same fashion as drugs would enter meridians, such as marijuana entering the liver meridian, speed entering the spleen meridian. Chinese herbs also enter these meridians. And as they find the obstruction, instead of overriding them, corrupting them, they solve them like detergent would do to greasy pots. If you've got a greasy pot, you scrub under hot water, you can scrub all day, you won't get clean. One drop of dishwashing liquid, the grease will come off. This is how Chinese herbs operate on your meridian system. The third one is intelligent diet. With the intelligent diet, we correct energetic imbalances by food. If you're a liver yang type, you would eat differently to liver yin types. If you're liver yin types, you would different to liver yang types. So energetic imbalances will be addressed with this diet and will create corrections of these imbalances where the person has experienced this balance already. This is a crucially important issue because as a therapist, I have observed a numerous amount of people who think that they're following the right diet but not getting better because the diet is actually not in association with their energy field. Unfortunately, the New Age, or the spiritual movement of the West, is influenced by certain concepts and ideas, and unfortunately affects liver yin types mostly. So I say, okay, what do you do? What's your diet? And then it comes forward, then it comes across. I fast all the time. I always eat raw foods. Always make sure that I have my fruit only till lunchtime, and I make sure I only have organic veggies and fruit, and I'm not eating any meat. I'm doing all the right things. From a liver yin type, to eat that diet, as an acupuncturist, you get a heart attack because it's the most inappropriate diet you can do. It's like being sunburned and decide to go into the sun in order to treat it. The biggest problem we have in our society is that people stop drugs and believing that stopping drugs is all there is. Just stopping the drugs is not the solution. Because in order for the drugs to work, they destroy very specific organ mechanisms, as we already looked into. So stopping the drugs will not repair this organ destruction, which is why we have so many drug users or ex-drug users in our society will feel empty, will feel very run down and never feel happy again, because the underlying organ condition hasn't been repaired yet. So if you're caught up in that energetic, you obviously constantly desire drugs because your organ system is so deficient that you can't feel good. And therefore the memory says, I want my drugs. Just for today I have to focus so strongly not to do it because I want to feel good again. Because food creates life. So once we then target the improvement of the organ function, what happens? The person naturally starts feeling balanced again, and the natural feeling of well-being comes forward, which then is we can take it to the fourth step. We can start doing the chi training. We do the correction by posture, breath, strength, and endurance. We focus on Tai Chi, yoga, weight training. Weight training in particular is crucially important for drug users because muscle controls spleen, spleen controls muscle, and drugs interfere with the spleen, which is responsible for mental clarity, focus, and production of chi and blood. So we combine the chi training, and then once we start all having these 4 steps in place, we then take it to the 5th level, where we then recapture that what the drugs have shown. And that's the kriyas or high-powered meditations. This is the state where we're finally entering that, what we always wanted to do when we did the drugs. This is where we get the Shaktipaths. This is where we get the awakening, transformation, or transmitting of energies by a guru, by a master. This is where we're experiencing states, or non-ordinary states of consciousness, far beyond in the intensity to marijuana and LSD. Once we reach this level, we realize that the drugs were only an introduction to this state. Then we realize that the drugs were only there to remind us who we truly are, a soul of the ability to vibrate on such high frequency where highest form of bliss are our birthright. And obviously, these forms can only occur if we have all these 4 steps in place. Unfortunately, as a lecturer and a seeker of the New Age for the past 20 years, I have seen that most people start here first. And this is where it gets a problem. Because if the body is destroyed by the drugs and the yin is deficient, and that means body and mind are already just about ready to separate from each other, and then you allow Shaktipath to come in, or high-powered information, the mind wanders off. And if the mind wanders off, the body will not allow that, and therefore the warning signal comes forward in form of anxiety, depression, psychosis. So the person believes they're doing something right, and they're actually aggravating the condition. This is what we observe now with the New Age, and we really have to start doing something where we say, come on, we in the Western world, we have done our 30 years of research, we've got to start logically onto it. And the logic onto it is basically, everyone who has done drugs, I always tell them, look, do this 3 first. Do that for a few months, 6 months, till you get your strengths happening first. Once you get your strengths happening, you can look at rhythm, you can look at routine, you can look into doing some form of chi training. Then you've done your chi training for 4 or 5 years and really getting strong and centered and whoa, feel like a samurai or feel like a really strong, grounded person where your body is vibrating with the highest frequency possible from an emotional perspective, integrated and very centered. Then goes psychedelic. And then woof, it opens up, and then there's no way that you ever will think of drugs again once you reach here. There's no way that I ever would think about doing drugs again, because why would I do drugs? Because this state is so much better. It's like a speed addict never would be attracted by having first-generation marijuana leaves on the table. They don't have mental affirmation to, no, I don't want to do this marijuana, I don't do this marijuana. If you experience speed, you experience the better drug. You'll be attracted for the better drug. And once we start going this way, we always will get naturally attracted to the higher state, which is in many ways probably a trick of the universe to initially start off with the drugs, but then once we start repairing, we're realizing it never was the real experience. It was only there to trigger it.
I find that my energy levels are a lot higher without smoking, to the point where, you know, my liver yang, obviously, you know, I find it difficult to relax in one sense, but I've got a lot more energy, and that's life. And the drug, you know, marijuana takes life away because I don't have the energy. And now that I'm not smoking as much, I've got a lot more energy, I've got a lot more clarity, and I can see life in a different way. So there's a lot more balance there.
It's just like Jost was saying, you know, about drugs. You know, you have some good line of speed, and it's all of a sudden everything's clear, or you drop a really good pill, and it's just like, I love all of us. You know, we're all beautiful. You know, I can see beauty in everyone, and it's that delusion that it brings on, instead of it being a real faith, I suppose. Because that's where I'm coming to too. It's that my desire to get off drugs has fueled a desire to wake up the spiritual.
What we experience on marijuana on a daily basis is exactly what we're destined to be for. So we need to understand that what initially the marijuana is doing, it's only temporary. So while we smoke, we maybe start looking into alternatives and then putting into place all these little parameters that are needed in order to continue the journey as soon as the dope is not doing its work anymore.